Welcome to Joshua Davidson Therapy. I am Joshua. Some change is predictable. When you know roughly what's coming, you've got a vague plan of how to deal with it, which you shore up as you get more knowledge. And that's fine, we do that quite well. We still sometimes struggle with change because change is difficult for us. We are used to patterns of repetition. But those patterns change, and sometimes not by us. Elisabeth Kübler-Ross studied change for people. She initially questioned people who had been diagnosed with cancer with how they now saw the world and what they were experiencing. This was done in an era where cancer was basically a death sentence. Her work in this exposed 5 stages of grief, which were then expanded upon to be generalized for people who have had an event occur to them, such as a diagnosis of cancer or someone dying from cancer, someone dying from an accident, a loss of a job. Whatever the significant external change is, so long as it has a negative impact on you, then this may apply. If the change is bad for me, or to my detriment, then there's a process of change I'm likely to go through. I'll tell this in a bit of a story sense, but it's important to realize people don't go through this in a linear fashion. They jump around a bit. It just makes more sense if I do it one after the other. Also, I may refer to resources. Resources is money, assets, emotion, cognition, friends, family, and other social aspects, and other things as well. Resources. An event is the thing that has occurred that has disrupted our normal pattern, requiring us to change. Prior to the event happening, maintaining the status quo is the most efficient way to live your life. You don't do things the hard way. You do things the easy way. And you've always found a way to make it as easy as it can be to get the outcomes you're after. You have a rhythm and a set of expectations and known measures for success. It is within your best interest as a general rule of thumb to keep things going in this way. An advantage of keeping the status quo, even if it isn't necessarily good for you, is that it's predictable. And even if we don't like what we're predicting, predictable is comfortable. Phase 0, the surprise phase. The event has just occurred that we weren't expecting, and we need to reassess. We experience surprise as our prediction for what was supposed to occur failed. Prediction helps us know what to do, and when our predictions fail, we need to figure out what to do. We can't keep going with the old plan, or can we? Phase 1, denial. We don't want the change to be real, or if it is real, bad enough that it requires us to change because we want to go back to the status quo. Often, if we just wait for a bit, the anomaly, the unexpected event, will go back to normal, and so we can continue on as we have before. It's efficient to do it this way. There's no point spending resources on a change that's not important or affecting us. We also don't want to spend resources on a false alarm. What if the change was not a change, it was a mistake? It's efficient to not act prematurely. And we usually don't notice when denial is effective because it didn't become a problem. Phase 2, bargaining. If we can do a small thing, pay a small price, make a small deal to get us back to the way things used to be, then that's the most efficient pathway to go. If that doesn't work, then we will expend a little more resource to get things back to the way they were. And then a little more, and then a little more, and then a little more, because an expenditure of resource now is worthwhile if we can go back to the status quo. When bargaining works, we can solve the event, then life returns to normal, and it feels good. It feels powerful. Phase 3, anger. When we realize that bargaining has failed, we'll try harder and with more aggression. When that fails, we'll blame someone else, something else, or ourselves. And when this works, we can then force that thing to change, to fix the mistake, so we can get back to the status quo. Or we realize that we are powerless to make change, and that brings feelings of anger and resentment. Phase 4, sadness. This is where we realize that we are ineffectual, that we cannot go back. We'll feel sadness or despair or numbness. These are all descriptions of how we feel in this phase. We might cry or just sit immobile. We may despair of the future and everything. We may question our lives. We might have an existential crisis. This phase is all about assessment. The change has happened, and at this point going back is just no longer feasible. But we don't know what the future looks like, so how can we go forwards? Phase 5, acceptance. The change is real, and to survive this, you must change. An acknowledgement of reality and an assessment itself is common here. Things you used to do are no longer valid, relevant, or effective, and they are discarded, and a search for new strategies to go forwards begins. It is important to survive in this moment, but we're not really sure what the future looks like. Phase 6, planning. We've survived the crisis, but we haven't really grown into our new future. The future has stabilized enough that we know what it looks like and what we need to become. So we start creating plans to become that. Then we start acting on those plans. We are now exiting the grief phase. A reminder that while I have taught this in a sequence, we don't necessarily experience these things in a sequence. I might experience denial and then bargaining and then anger and go back to denial and then onwards to sadness and then back to bargaining and anger and so on and so on and so on. And years after we've gone past all this, we can still go back and feel angry about what's happened or despair at the changes. This is normal. It just sometimes helps to know what we're experiencing and why. And this is useful when things are simple, when a single event has occurred or a brief event has occurred. What's happening to us here is complex because we are stuck in this phase of the world constantly changing and we don't know what the future is going to look like. Some people are very excited about the future. Some people are very scared about it. But no one really knows what it's going to look like. It's too soon to make that plan. We need to survive this moment now. And later, as things start to settle down, that's the time to start defining what do we want our future to look like? What are we going to put our collective effort towards? And how many people can we get on board with that collective effort? Thank you for listening.